very grateful. You know, lots of dumbbells, and some people took some bars and plates and things like that, and some of the balance rails. But it was interesting because the block that we're on in Boulder is not really like one that people really walk on much. Like every once in a while you see a few people, but there were so many people out for walks just like alone, which you see. And the other thing I see in my neighborhood a lot more is people who have dogs or taking their dogs out for a walk, like people I've never seen before. And definitely people who like don't walk their dog, like their dog is really poorly trained. So yeah, they're like, I just got to get out of the house. Or they're telling their kids, like, go take the dog for a walk. Just leave, please.
Look, my students already writing like it's a good idea to borrow the equipments. Maybe we're gonna do that because I send them some missions, like for example, juggling with the tennis balls. But most of them don't have tennis balls at home. They can use lemons, but now food's a problem as well. Yeah,
that's true.
So maybe we're gonna do something similar to that.
Yeah. Well, you know, like it's kind of interesting. Like that's kind of mostly what I wanted to talk to you about today is like, you know, first of all, for those of you who don't know, Rodrigo was one of the first people to open up a dedicated facility to this movement practice in 2015. Is that right? Or was it 16? Because it was before us.
A little bit before, it was 3 months before you guys opened.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. I kind of wanted to like focus the conversation on your facility and growing that community, like a really vibrant, like strong community down in Brazil, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about like how we're figuring out how to survive and kind of keep people together and unified in this new environment. So, and also I do a lot of people are watching, so if you want to ask questions, you can read them too, Rodrigo. So if there's something in Portuguese that you see,
okay, I can translate.
Yes.
Yeah, nice. So yeah, guys, if you want to ask any questions, and if you're not comfortable to write in English, you can write in Portuguese, and I translate to Zach, and we can keep the conversation going. Actually, Zach, I want to start just for them to get introduced to you a little bit more. Tell me a little bit about your first encounter with the movement culture, and though you are one of the oldest ones, like the oldest one that I know that get into this culture. Just a brief moment so you can explain.
Yeah, I was living in run a CrossFit gym, the first CrossFit in the country, CrossFit Herzliya, with this great guy, Omri Peled, and I was one of the first coaches there, so I got to train there for free because I was in university, and I ended up finding and following Ido online around 2010, and luckily for us, he was supposed to go to the US but couldn't get a visa, and so he ended up staying in Israel, and we had a small workshop with maybe like 6 or 7 people at our facility in Herzliya, which is actually now, what's really cool is the space that we built and trained out of is now Stas's Movement Freaks.
It's in good hands.
Yeah, it's really, so it's fun because every time he posts videos, I see like the pull-up bars that Omri and I like welded, and you know, it like brings back a lot of memories. So that's kind of cool how we traded off. But yeah, so I met Ido then, and then I started training online with them shortly after when I moved back to the States, and that's kind of yeah, that's my short story.
Yeah, good. I will tell my story as well. I will just say something in Portuguese that people can ask questions in Portuguese as well, because they are writing this to me. Galera, só para vocês saberem, quem não está confortável para perguntar alguma coisa em inglês, pode perguntar em português aqui, eu leio, aí eu vou traduzir para o Zack e a gente continua aqui, mas a resposta vai ser em inglês, tá? Okay, let's keep going.
If you wanna translate anything back into Portuguese, obviously, feel free.
Okay. Yeah, already a student is asking if the people in Boulder are training and moving in their houses as we are. I will get back to that, okay? Patricia. So, about my story, I'm a physical education teacher since always. I have a PE degree, but at the time, 2014, 15, more or less, I was working on the public office job.
Yeah.
And then I met Ido on the internet. I went to Miami 7 years ago, I think,
Yeah.
or 6, I don't know. Yeah, to the Movement X, hosted by Sean, our friend from Republic of Movement. And then the journey started. Like as soon as I got back, I started online coaching. The same year, I went to Australia for an internship. The same year, I went to Thailand for the first movement camp. I brought Ido to Brazil. Then I went to European movement meeting. And then we all know I left my old job. I am realizing this dream, which is already, it's still like, it's a verb. It's going on
Yeah.
to build this school, this community. And yeah, it's a challenge, but it's a good challenge. It's a good goal to have. Like it's new. I'm so glad to have you guys, you, Matthew, and a lot more friends all over the world that we can share, because it's new. It's new. We are the first one. We don't have much people to change, to exchange some ideas, and to have like a guy, like real guys like you that I really trust, that are doing a good job, a real job like me. It's priceless. So yeah, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I mean the feeling's mutual. It's I think it's interesting because I don't think people maybe realize it so much, how much like you know, it's tough because no one's really doing what we're doing exactly. Like there's definitely like CrossFit gyms and yoga and other kind of things like that, but it's such a different beast, the work we're doing. And you know, in the beginning, I think you and I made or we made a lot of the same mistakes in Boulder and Brazil of like you know, our experience from this practice was mostly based off of seminars and kind of like shorter events, and then how to translate that into a more long-term practice was something that we had to figure out this you know, this on our own. And it's been so valuable to us to have you, to have you know, Clayton and Sapinoso and also like Dean and Leela now have a group. So it's cool. I think people don't realize how much like behind the scenes the community is kind of talking. And I know like with you, it's like every week we're throwing ideas back and forth. How did this work? You know, how did your students respond to this? And give advice. And yeah, it's cool because I mean that's the magic of, I think, that a lot of people are realizing right now with the internet, is like how useful it is just to communicate people who are normally in your life on a regular basis.
Yeah.
With you and I and Matt and the others, like, you know, sadly we only get to see each other maybe like 3, maybe 4 times a year, but it doesn't really feel like that anymore. I feel like we communicate so frequently. It's just kind of like it's just like, oh, and now Rodrigo's here and I get to live with him in an apartment in Tel Aviv for a few months. And yeah, and then in those times it's fun because we get to sit around the table and have these really intense conversations and throw ideas around. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty great.
And also what I think it's happening more and more, it's our students are visiting the other facilities around the world.
Yeah.
And like I have a lot of students that already went to some places, and what they get back saying is like, it's also Hosanna, she's here in the chat, she said when she got back, it's the same language. It was another language, another people, another culture, but it felt like I was in Pratique doing the same things with yeah. So
Yeah.
we are connected, and sometimes I think that people missed that, because sometimes they cannot even explain to their friends what they are doing. And I always tell them that don't try to explain, because you will fail. I fail, so imagine you. It's hard to explain. Tell what you feel that changed in your life, what is valuable to you there, and maybe they can connect to that. But try to explain is the hardest mission of all the missions we do.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's why we just tell people, like, just come, just try it. But I mean, it's good to hear, and I agree. I've had the same experience. Like I haven't been to a lot of the spaces. I've been trained with Johnny's group in San Francisco. I've been to Tel Aviv. I've been to Amsterdam. I've been to New York, and it's definitely like, you know, for me, I definitely feel like at home. And it just goes to show. I mean, this is the thing that we've been talking to our community about, and I think we're seeing it in practice here right now. Is like how much it's the work that unifies people, not the people that unifies the work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so
Yeah.
there's always this thing in kind of communities of like, we have to do all these like events together, and we have to, you know, have birthday parties together, and we have to go hang out together so that way the community can gel. But I think what we've found with our practice, and I assume you've seen the same, is that it's like kind of the commonality of like the practice and the growth that comes from it and the challenges that come from it, that unifies people in a way that you don't see in a lot of other places outside of maybe like more traditional sports or maybe the military. You see kind of that camaraderie the same way, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And we had a few questions that went passed over here. One about movement camp. Of course, it's canceled for obvious reasons. Probably if you guys were registered, you received an email with some options. A student of mine, Fred, he's asking, Fred, I used the English accent to say, Fred, he's asking how do we believe that the practice is going to be from 10 years from now? It's a good question, because 5 years ago was completely different. Our practice is faceless. It's always changing. It's evolving. It's like any other area of science, I believe. It's always changing. We are absorbing what's useful, discarding what's not useful. We are testing in ourselves. We are testing in the closed students. Then we start to test in the regular students. So faceless is one primary characteristics of our practice. So it will change. I think, like, I cannot say anything more direct or technical how it's gonna be, but I think it's gonna be. Opa, my foot. I think it's gonna be much more humane in a sense of profound, like not therapeutical. The therapeutic part, it's inside. Some people get into it thinking that therapeutic is the main part, but it's not the main part. It's a big part, but it's more. I think it's gonna be more profound in this human sense. Like people are gonna be more sensible to the surroundings, to themselves. The interoception, this word, I'm in love for this word, like this capacity that connected to your internal. So I think we're gonna go towards that. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. 100%. I love that foot.
Oh, again, my foot.
I think we're going to see more like this continued path towards complexity. I think, but generally I agree. It's like, it's so interesting. Like if you had asked me the same question 10 years, so I started this practice about 10 years ago. I never would have guessed. I never would have guessed that I was here now, right? Because 10 years ago it was about the one-arm handstands and the one-arm chins and the planches and like this really kind of like, now in my mind, like at the time it seemed like so free, like, oh, I could do planches and I could do all the handstands I want to, and there's going to be so much freedom. But now looking back, it seems so rigid. It seems so like limited compared to what we're working on now. So I think more movement towards like this openness and this complexity. But I like the analogy you said of it's like a science and that it's evolving, right? Like there's at this point, like maybe in like in physics or some other kind of like complex field, like we can only theorize of what might come, and that might lead us a little bit to express and research ideas. But at the end of the day, it's like we really don't know what we're going to discover or what's going to be presented in front of us. So. You guys don't want to see my feet.
Yeah, I saw his foot already. It's not a good view.
It's not a good foot. Rodrigo's feet are much nicer.
I have a hobbit foot.
I have clown feet.
Yeah, and another student asked about how is your community dealing with the lockdown? What's
Yeah,
happening?
it's honestly like I mean, well, considering I think now we're about a weekend, people are starting to kind of see this as more of a reality and a little bit less of like this long vacation or break. And
Mm-hmm.
really encouraging people, you know, to make routines in their day, and I'm trying to hold myself accountable to that as well. And it's hard, but I think like, and what's really been nice has been getting up early and doing these conversations with you guys. So I think we might kind of continue
Yeah,
that as long as we can. But yeah, we've set up an infrastructure for communicating online and continuing training. So we're writing programming for everyone. We're sending videos out. I know you're doing something similar. Today
yeah,
we're going to try with those students who have signed up to do like a conference Zoom, like going to the conference application.
yeah. We are
So
gonna do
we're gonna
this
do like
soon as well.
we're gonna do like an hour one. If that works well, we'll maybe make it bigger and more regular. So I don't know. I mean, we're just kind of testing ideas out and seeing what's working. Like I said, we rented out some equipment to our students, or lent out some equipment to students, which I think is nice because, you know, a lot of people don't have things. But what's nice here, we have the advantage of Amazon. So while things are still getting shipped, a bunch of people have been ordering rings and other
Mm-hmm.
simple tools like that, which is going to help a lot. But you know, it's like, even then I talked to a student yesterday who's like, hey, I don't, you know, she doesn't have the money to get equipment, and she doesn't really have a lot of space, and she's like, I just don't know what to do. And she's been training with us for a few years, and it's really interesting in this moment of like not having kind of consistent contact with us in class every day. But I reminded her, I'm like, you know, you still have your handstand practice, which is, it travels very easily, so you don't need much space. You still have, you know, all of your locomotion. She has great locomotion work, and she's been improving so much. And it's like, you don't need a lot of space, and you don't need a lot of structure. You understand, like, you know, enough movements that you can start to play with them. I just don't think she's ever been really given the opportunity to be that free. Just maybe a little bit of exposure to like how we maybe missed some things as teachers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And showing that, like, when we put locomotion together, work for you in class, it's not like some amazing secret grand plan. It's like really simple. It's the isolation work into integration work into either closed system flow or improvisation.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Two good points there. One, I used to say to my students, actually, we have this quote here,
yeah,
that the three most important things that we need to practice, it's floor, wall, and a body. So now is the time, guys. Every one of you lives in a body. You have walls at home and floor. So don't forget that. The other thing is, now with this amount of freedom, maybe some students started to understand that sometimes in class we restricted a lot the work, because this restriction brings freedom. Because if we are not restricting some things during the classes, during the daily life,
hmm,
we doesn't have the opportunity to isolate and to work in some tools that maybe later you can use in a more open scenario. And yeah, people are having some doubts, are getting confused. Some are more comfortable, they have more tools, they have more time in the practice, they are training alone. But what I said to them yesterday is to be strong and have patience,
yeah,
because things will change. We are changing. We are not stuck like waiting for this time to pass. We are providing some tools. We are working in some good platforms to keep with the quality education,
yeah,
which I think is our main thing in
yeah.
our facilities.
Yeah, I like the thing about the body and the walls and the floor. It's, you know, there's always the fantasy, like I talked about this yesterday with Andres, is like the fantasy of like, if I just had all the time and I just had my body, like I would leave this like just amazing and have all this ability. And it's, it's something Ido said in the past is like, you're not the monk who goes to the mountaintop and come back a master, right?
Yeah.
So don't confuse that. There's definitely a lot that you can gain from practicing on your own, and you and I did a lot of that in the early years of like training on our own, and it's helpful.
Yeah, a lot.
Still need that leadership and that structure. Like we didn't do it alone. We had Ido providing us online platform, providing us feedback on videos, and really encouraging us to look at the work that we're doing with a more precise eye. And I think that a lot of people are getting that opportunity now. So don't mistake that for training alone. Likewise, everyone, like I said, you have that fantasy of like, if I was just locked in a room, I would just discover my body and research. And it's like, okay, now you're locked in a room, like discover your body and research. But
Yeah.
don't think that you have to do it alone. Like, especially your students and our students is like, there's still, it's not just the work that you can provide for them now. It's like, look back on your notes, look back on the practice over the last year or so, and look for the things where you said, I'm going to work on this, or I'm going to spend time on that, and make a decision to actually start to work on it and spend time on it and check the box that needs to be checked next to that project.
Yeah. I also think that one of the main things that we were looking for that time of online coaching at the beginning of the movement culture is we were like claiming, starving for having a conversation with some other people about what we were doing.
Yeah.
And you were in a CrossFit gym doing weird things. I was in a global regular gym doing some weird things.
Yeah.
We didn't have anyone to have a conversation to share. And now we have all this global community. We have like a social media. We have these channels of communication. We have this tribe around the world. So it's easier to not feel alone, to exchange ideas, to exchange frustrations. Yeah, I wish we had this like 7 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Yeah, I agree. It's all there is a risk to it though, of getting lost in the wash and maybe getting distracted by it as well. So there's always the give and take. But yeah, I agree. Like the we were starving for people to share this with and talk to, and now it's abundant. I remember when I started kind of focusing a little bit more on what I was eating and trying the paleo thing. It was around the same time, like maybe 2008, 2009. And there was like one website, and it was just text. And then I think Rob Wolf had just started he had a podcast with like 1 or 2 episodes. And now I tell people who are like interested in them, like, it's so easy. You just like, there's so much information. There's so many good recipes. There's so much good stuff out there. But there's also a lot of like, you see like these paleo cookies and paleo chips, and you realize it's like, it's by that name, but in reality, it's just the old, it's the old garbage you used to eat. And I think there's the similarity here with the practices. Like, people are saying movement, and maybe not talking about the same thing that we're talking about. Not better or worse, it's just different. And I think it can get easy to get distracted by other people kind of pushing their own agendas. Or different agendas, or agendas that maybe aren't the best for you as a student or you as a practitioner. So I just encourage people to, turn the package over, look at the ingredients of the paleo cookies, and ask yourself, is this something that you would be eating normally? So do that for your movement practice as well. Like, these people giving out classes online and advice online, like, look into them before you dive headlong into what they're giving you.
Yeah, like our teacher Ido is saying, like, for years on the internet, now the problem is not like lack of information, it's excess of information, abundance. And we have to put the filters. It's hard, but sometimes I help like people from Brazil, like young guys, usually they send me messages, hey, I want to give classes of that, how do I start? I usually, when I feel like it's a real person that really needs help, I give my phone number. I talk to them on WhatsApp. I send some voice messages, but I don't like say sugar things. It's easy, just go for it, man. It's hard. it's a science. It's you need a lot of self-knowledge, and you need to work your. There's no books. There's no movies. There's no universities. It's not cheap, but you can make it be cheaper in some ways. But it's a lifetime project, and maybe it's not for everyone. We
Yeah.
know that it's not for everyone.
Yeah. Let's see. We got some more questions. Do you schedule your own classes, or does the EDO administration send it? We do everything ourselves. Like we take the information that we've learned from EDO. We practice it for months, sometimes years, before it gets presented to our students, and then we have the freedom to structure classes in our own way. So even though Rodrigo was saying that his student traveled and it's the same language and it feels the same, other than some ideas that we share, like we really are kind of all following our own format, which is nice because it means that there's research being done in many other facilities, and we can come back to each other and say, hey, this is working, this isn't working, our students are getting value from this and maybe not so much that. So I actually think there's some really amazing strengths out of doing it like that, as opposed to having everything dictated to us.
Yeah.
And that we all get to do our research kind of spread out across the world, and then when we come together, we can communicate and share what's working. That being said, what works in Brazil might not work in New York City or Boulder, Colorado, because there are cultural differences. Like we were talking to Modus 2 days ago, and they have a class at 5:30 in the morning, and it's busy for them. I don't think that would work in Boulder. Boulder starts a little bit later here because for whatever reason. And I know you have early classes also, right?
We have 6:20 a.m. classes. It actually is the busiest class of the facility. But I don't know if 5:30 would work. I could think about 3 or 4 crazy people here that would be there, but not much.
Yeah.
I would be one of them. Also, what I think that happens a lot, and I think it happens with you guys as well, is even without having communication on what's happening, what's the projects, sometimes I open the Instagram of Boulder, of Ape, and I see you guys doing the same thing that I planned with my teachers, like the same month, and I said, hey, it's impressive. Maybe it's the collective knowledge, the how did you say, the young thing? I forgot. Okay, but it's something weird.
Yeah, it happens a lot. But
and
again,
also,
for me, it's always like validation, like, okay, I'm not crazy.
yeah, that's also good. And also when I usually come back from the events like movement camp, sometimes I think that my students think that, okay, he came from movement camp with a lot of new material, so the class is gonna be based on what he learned there.
Yeah,
not even close. Probably what happened is I got back from movement camp full of energy and inspiration, and a lot of projects to work on myself for a year and a half. But then when I get back with this energy, I'm already feeling comfortable to share some things that I'm work already for 2 years alone with my closest students. So yeah, don't confuse that, guys.
Yeah, I say it's funny because there's things from like 3, 4, 5 years ago that we still haven't started to work on yet. And it's like sometimes we'll come back from movement camp and it's all right, like cool, the thing from 2 years ago, now I feel like I'm a little bit more prepared to start to teach it. But yeah, it's very rare. Maybe like we'll take 1 or 2 little tiny things that was kind of new, like usually an idea, and we'll play with it, but it's almost never happens.
Yeah, the same.
All right, we got lots of questions today. This is nice. I would love to hear your point of view about strength and what it is to be a strong person actually. I'm not talking about moving weights.
Yeah, it's a big topic, Pedro. Pedro usually asks questions like this. He's my student.
Good, you got smart students.
Yeah, it's nice. Man, it's a big topic. To be totally honest with you, I think that there are a lot more prepared people to answer a big question like this. I know that our practice, it crosses a lot with some philosophy, because everything, I think, starts in the body. So it's a good way to start thinking about these more profound questions with your own body, with your own being. We have inside the movement culture, inside even the mentorship students, some people that faced and are facing some real big challenge, like healthy challenge, personal challenge, that we talked a lot with them, we share a lot of things with them. And the internal practice as well, it's a big thing that people don't even grasp how important it is on the movement perspective that we are teaching. It's kind of a glue that put together everything else. So if you don't have like this capacity of strength to be with yourself, to watch things clear, you can like move your weights like you said all day long, and it's not even close to the real strength. And that's a question that I will keep asking to myself, and will keep sharing my discoveries with you and everyone close for the rest of my life, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't agree more. It's interesting because I think for me, like that, like the traditional, like just being strong, right? Like that was my talent. That was the thing that came a little bit easier to me. I was able to do like
Same here.
Yeah, like for sure, like lift heavy weights, do the advanced strength skills like that. That was always something that I didn't have to work at. It felt like I didn't have to work as hard as others on some pieces. Some I did, but it's so interesting now to look back and realize how much I was missing of the bigger picture. And like you say, especially with the internal practice that we've been kind of given access to lately, and not just that, like even like I realized how weak I was in terms of certain elements of my focus and my discipline, and even being soft, right? Like it seems like counterintuitive, but the softness was something I was missing physically and emotionally as well, and it limited my strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not been easy. It's been probably the hardest thing for me in my life, is to kind of come to a reckoning with that, and start to put my focus and energy towards that type of work. But it's a tough question to answer. I think what we're seeing now especially is like real strength is flexibility. And I don't mean like, touch your toe to your forehead. I mean, it's adaptability and being able to reshape who you are as a person, who you are as a partner for the people around you, who you are as a teacher, a leader, to adapt to the situations that are coming to you. And I'm not saying that I do this well or I understand it, but to me, this is what feels like the most important thing. You and I, and we've put everything that we have into building, facilities to teach our students and lead our communities from, and Matt has done this as well, and like you have Dean and Leela in Santa Cruz who literally were supposed to open last weekend. Like we put everything that we have financially into opening these spaces, and now we don't have them, right? They've been taken away from us by this thing that is bigger than anything that we can control. So the question is now, from an aspect of strength, is what can we do as practitioners, as teachers, as leaders in our community to provide strength in these different ways. So I know we're getting very philosophical. It's probably very different than the question your student was asking, but this is what I feel right now. Like this is the question I'm asking myself, is like, okay, so what does my strength look like now? And it hasn't been easy. I've been having, like Janisa will tell you, I've been having really hard days, and it's been tough, and I've not always been the most amazing person to spend time with, I'm sure, the last few days, but like this is what we're figuring out now. It's like, okay, it's a different type of strength than I thought. It's not a strength of like having these great spaces and these groups that we have trained together. It's not that strength. It's a different type of strength that we have to provide for people. So
yeah, it's a philosophical strength. We have a philosophical community as well. So right now we don't have our physical spaces, but we have the philosophy behind, and that's the glue that will keep us together.
Yeah, 100%. What's going to be
Yeah.
interesting, what I'm looking forward to figuring out is like how we'll continue to bring people in without having these spaces, right? Like, is there a way for us to draw new students to us and not be able to do some of this close work? It's something I'm going to be interested in, because I think this is going to last a while. This is going to be a bit like the new normal for us for the
Yeah,
next year or so. So
I
it's going
think
to
as
be,
well.
yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm excited to see the kind of strength that you provide to your community and that you can, you know, give insight to us up here about, and I'm excited to try and help you do the same. So
Hmm.
heavy
Yeah.
shit. All right. Any
More
other good?
questions?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go around.
My student who is over 50, she asked if there are many people over 50 in your
Oh yeah,
facility. And
yeah.
also, Rafaela, my sister, maybe she's reading there. You can say the number to us. I think we have like one more than 70, three or four more than 60, and like a lot more than 50. But Rafaela know the numbers as well. What's your numbers, more or less?
Yeah, so we have a few students over like 60 and 70. One of them was one of the first people to sign up to online training.
Hmm.
This guy Mark, and he used to be a heart surgeon, and now, you know, for him, he comes in and he just wants to kind of keep moving and keep his mind active and challenge himself. His big focus is working on his balance, which is really cool. But we have a lot of students over 50. I don't know. I honestly stopped counting a long time ago. And it's funny because they always like to say like, oh, I'm the old person in the room. And like, yeah, generally the age is a bit younger, maybe in like 30s and 40s. And we have a lot of young guys and girls too. But you know, we have a lot of people over 50. And what's great is most of them end up being, you know, some of the best movers that we have. I'm thinking of Don. I posted a video a while back with clips of him doing locomotion, and it's just like the guy learns really quickly, and the guy and focuses really well. No surprise, he has a really robust internal practice, and you can see it when he comes in.
No surprise for sure.
His focus is very sharp. But yeah, it's not in the first few years. It was like, yeah, it was a space of a bunch of like 25-year-old guys without their shirts on, and and it changed really quickly, and once the dam broke, it just wasn't even the thing that we had to like try to provide for anymore. It just happened.
Yeah, what I think that happens a lot with me, and I'm sure it happens with you. Most of the best students that I have are these people over 50. And sometimes people doesn't get it that when we call like best students, it's not in terms of talent and
No, not at
abilities,
all.
not at all. And they are really the best because it's kind of a mixture between mental attitude, focus, clarity. Yeah, it's nice. It's so good to have them classes. And don't get me wrong, guys. We are not looking for talented people that know how to do a lot of things. We want like real students that are willing to learn, to struggle, to discover. Self-discovery. It's one of the biggest things of our practice, for sure.
Yeah, and I think I'm just gonna say, like, I think people look at like you, Rodrigo, and they assume that you've always been just good at this stuff and talented. But Rodrigo is one of the hardest workers I've ever met in my entire life, and that's why That's why those students interest him and us as well, is because it's something that connects to us. Not that we don't mind people who have talent, but they tend to be the hardest people to work with. I think the people who are a little bit more modest and kind of like they're come into our space to learn tend to be the best students. And there's no surprise that those often end up being people who are older and have a little bit more life experience. It's not the rule, but it tends to be that people who have kind of been around the block a few times, they're a little bit more open to be guided by someone, even someone, you know, half their age, which is every time I get to teach someone who's like, you know, in their 40s or 50s, it's like it blows me away that they're so willing to listen to me and listen to Matt. You know, it's like it's quite an honor.
Yeah, for sure. And I felt like sharing something that
Yeah.
it's related to my practice, and And some question, I think Rebecca asked about our personal projects at the moment. Uh, it's related to what you said as well, to be a hard worker, and I'm not talented in most of the things that I'm sharing and posting. And I, in the last years, I was basing my practice on the things that I had difficult, just difficult. So I can say a lot of things here, more looseness of the body, segmental spinal control, and a lot of things related to that. And I was doing just this.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to get like overwhelmed, and I started to lose the balance. And I was reading some say of Jordan Peterson about order and chaos, and
Yeah.
how we are supposed to fluctuate between the two. Like the chaos is the unknown, is the things that we are discovering. And I said, okay, it's too much. All my life now it's based on the chaos. I need a little bit more order. So I started to balance since the beginning of the year with some things with that it's my strength, like yeah, more tactical games, reactivity, work, power, and then I started to find the balance again. So I think it might be a good cue for practitioners that don't go towards your strength always, but also don't leave them there and just keep like on the chaos, getting frustrating and traveling just on the unknown. Try to find this balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great, it's a really great point. I mean, I think it's interesting because actually someone commented on an old post of mine of a picture of me and Ido, and I said, think it was like after a week in Israel, and I said, thanks for the fun and the time spent working on the things I don't like. And the person was like, what do you mean? Like you only go there and do the stuff that because Ido tells you to and you don't like it? I think that was kind of the question. And I said, no, like what I meant by it, what we mean by that is like orienting yourself towards a practice that is only derived around things that are pleasurable or things that you want. Like I want a one-arm handstand, or I want to be able to do locomotion, and orienting yourself towards this kind of fun or this joy is a slippery slope, and you can gain a lot from that. There's nothing wrong with it in the short term, I think, and I think having some of that in your practice consistently is important. Things that bring you joy, things that are fun, things that that are maybe a little bit more like ego driven is okay, but also working on the things that at the time are very boring or mundane. Like we're doing a lot of the work we're doing now is based so much on like high volume repetition, like the segmental articulation of the spine work or the torso organization work. It's 50, 60 or longer minutes of the same movements over and over, or standing meditation work where you're standing still for like really long periods of time. It's nothing that I start and I'm like, I can't wait to do this today. I'm so excited for. I find pleasure in it, maybe delayed gratification of maybe the end of the session, maybe the end of the month, maybe years down the road. Like the water quality, when we started, it was something very hard for me, but I get so much pleasure out of it now.
Yeah, same.
And it took years to get to a point where I feel something coming from it. So I'd say the thing that I look for now is not so much fun, but is maybe even like delayed gratification. But the gratification itself isn't even very rewarding, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Let me tell you one thing. Actually, guys, I was really shy to do it, really insecure. Zach knows. I never did this live session thing, and especially in English, I was really insecure not to express myself properly. But today, I love to do this again, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Today is, yeah. Cool.
Let's make this a regular thing. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
through, you know, with a bunch of the other guys from the mentorship, but honestly, man, here's what I love about this, and here's what I love about you. Every time we spend time together and we talk, I learn more about you, and you're such a smart guy, and it's, you know, like I'll say this: you post some stuff on your Instagram in Portuguese, and I run it through Google Translate, and I try and read it. But I think you have so much to share with the rest of the world, and your English is fucking good. So I say, don't be afraid to share this stuff. There's people outside. Obviously, support your community in Brazil. Support the people who speak Portuguese. But there's so much that like interesting things that you have to say, and you're a thinker. So don't be shy, man. Like share your thoughts with the rest of the world. At least you know, if you speak some English, that helps share this to a few more people across the globe. So I would.
Yeah, you are a good pillar to me, man. Since the beginning, we shared a lot of things and exchange ideas and inspiration. And yeah, for sure, let's do this again. Today is the birthday of my stepson. We're gonna do a birthday party at Zoom app. Everybody in their house.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, that's the world we are living today. Let's adapt to it. We have nothing to do, but adaptability is one of the main. How do I say? Come on, help me with your English.
One of the main pillars, man. It's one of the main
foundational
elements of our practice.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes and answer some more questions before we wrap up. But, man, Rodrigo, it's great to see your face.
Go for it, because Isabella already appeared here like 2 times, and the clock, hey, it's time, let's go. I said, okay, I'm coming.
All right.
That's it, man.
We'll talk soon, okay?
Bye, guys. Obrigado aí para quem participou, quem não entendeu tudo. Um dia eu faço em português. For who didn't understand everything, one day I will do it in Portuguese, okay? Bye, guys.
Bye.